Welcome back everyone, Gajan here, and thank you so much for tuning in. If you're watching this video, it's probably because you're either interested in buying this lens or you're just supporting all the videos that I put out, in which case, thank you so much. If you haven't already, please do consider subscribing to the channel. It does make a difference. So if you're into Fuji gear, reviews, behind the scenes of photo shoots, and understanding some of my editing workflow, I think you're not gonna be disappointed. You're gonna enjoy the stuff that I have coming up. Now, let's actually get to this lens. The 90mm F2 lens from Fujifilm. It's a super premium product that produces amazing results. And as with any of my lens reviews, I get the specs and technical stuff. Let's just get that out of the way first and talk about usability. The 90mm works out to just above 135mm in terms of equivalent focal length. And as the name would suggest, it has a constant f2 aperture, really wide for a lens like this. What's cool about this lens, it has dust and weather resistance. It has two extra low dispersion elements in there to really get some fantastic optics. And also it has a quad linear focusing motor, which is 33% more linears than their tri-linear focusing motor. Anyways, you can focus as close as 60 centimeters with this lens. It has a 62mm filter size and weighs about 540 grams or just under a pound. Now, with that out of the way, let's actually talk about what's important. The 90mm F2, it's been on my radar for a while, and my friend Stock Easy produced a video about this lens a while ago, and that's when it actually came on my radar. I started thinking about it and didn't really have a use for it, and that was probably because I was so happy with the 56mm F1.2. And truthfully, if it wasn't for the growth of this channel and the user feedback, I probably wouldn't even look at the 90mm F2. But late last year, I started considering it and started to see if there was a place where I can bring this into my lens collection and actually have something that I would use, not just because I wanted to collect it. So as I was mapping out 2020 and the episodes I want to do for 2020, because that's what I do, I have every episode for 2020 planned out, as well as the photo shoots and that kind of thing, I put in where I could get the 90mm F2 and start capturing content and start putting together a review, this video that you're watching right now. And I have to say, as I started this process and as I started using this lens, it started to supplant the 56mm, the place that it had in my heart. If you've been watching this channel, you know that the 56mm f1.2 lens from Fuji is one of my top 3 lenses. I've mentioned it time and time again for photo and for video. However, there were some considerable improvements that this lens brought that would ultimately replace that lens for me. Namely, weather and dust resistance, a much better aperture ring, and a considerably better focusing mechanism. Now, don't get me wrong, these are two wildly different focal lengths. You know, you have the 85 equivalent with the 56 and 137 with this 90 f2. And truth be told, with the 56, you'll probably get more latitude because it's wider compared to this telephoto lens. You can do a bit more with it and you can punch in with your feet if need be. Further, with the optical quality being so high on both lenses, it'll come back to also your preference and really which of the two you prefer. But I'll talk about that later. Let's get back to this lens. How does the 90mm f2.0 perform? It's a benchmark lens from Fujifilm. Yes, I said it. The contrast is phenomenal, the sharpness is amazing, and the colors are rich. And really, when we're talking about color accuracy, I gotta be careful because it means different things to different people and how they interpret colors, really. So I'll just say this, it's rich in what it captures. And let me also say that this 90 f2 is not one of Fuji's unofficial Fujicron lenses. I know Fuji fans have given this name mimicking the Leica Summicrons, their f2 lenses. You know, people when they talk about this with respect to Fuji, we're talking about the 16 2.8, the 23 f2, the 35 f2, the 50 f2. This is not in the same family as those lenses. Yes, they have the same aperture, and yes, they do have dust and weather resistance, but that's about it. This is not in the same family as a Fujicron lens. Do not call this a Fujicron. The 90mm f2 lens from Fujifilm is a premium lens. It's to be compared with the 56-1.2, the 35-1.4, the 23-1.4, the 16-1.4. That's the family that this belongs to. And really, that's what it should be measured against and compared against. Anyways, why do I say this? Well, listen, if you're a newcomer, it's easy to conflate the two and think that this is in that category. They're not, really. It's a premium lens from Fujifilm. Now, let's get back to comparing this 90mm to that 56mm. Does this perform better than that lens? When you're looking at a technical standpoint, if you're measuring against absolute accuracy and sharpness and really to the granular level in that regard, this edges out the 56 in my opinion. And while the 56 does give you about an extra stop of light performance and perform better in low light scenarios and a wider aperture and the better fall off that would bring, the overall sharpness and technical ability of this 90mm f2 stand above it in a surgical way. The difference isn't considerable, it's just a bit ahead. And really, if you're a shooter that's using off-camera flash and you're shooting predominantly f4 to f8 and you're wondering what's gonna give you the better image out of camera, I will say it is the 90mm f2. Now, with that being said, with the 56-1.2, you're getting something that's slightly more portable, is gonna give you a little over an extra stop of low light performance. And I will say it also has this little bit of special Fuji sauce that gives it a unique rendering that just isn't there on the 90mm. And you won't notice this unless they're side by side, but it's there. And I say this because at this premium level, knowing all those things, it comes back to preference. What are you gonna value for the type of content that you're producing? Ultimately, if you want my recommendation, if you're comparing the 56 and 90, if I just had to put a general recommendation out there, I will lean toward the 56 more than the 90 because it does give you a bit more latitude because of its focal length. It gives you that extra low light performance. It does give you a certain je ne sais quoi in how it renders images. So in that way, it can prove to be more valuable in certain scenarios, but it really comes back to you asking those questions about what you produce, how you produce, and what your intended result is supposed to be. Now, with that being said, I sold my 56. Yes, my beloved 56-1.2, and maybe the guy that bought it off me is actually watching this right now, and he knows that this was a painful thing for me to do. Why did I sell my 56 shortly after getting this lens? Above all else, it came down to simplicity. I want to keep my photography options as simple as possible, whether it's studio, street, or film. Just keep 3 or 4 options for each and have it focused toward what they're supposed to do. For the studio work I'm intending to capture, going between the 16-1.4, 23 f2, and now the 90 f2 provides a good enough family for me to get the image that I'm looking for. And adding a 56 in there is just adding another variable, and truth be told, for what I'm looking to capture, it doesn't bring enough value for me to continue to hold on to that lens. So while it is a fantastic product, while I did say it was one of my top 3 lenses, ultimately I chose the 90 f2 over that lens for what I'm producing. Portrait work is near and dear to my heart. Not only does it pay the bills, but it's something that is really fulfilling for me. And when I'm looking to get the best portraits possible, to try to tell the best story possible with the person in front of me, the 90mm f2 for me does a better job of that than the 56-1.2. I have to put a little bit of an asterisk here because Fuji is going to release the 50mm F1.0, and you can believe that that has me excited, and I'm probably gonna buy that lens, and I will definitely do a review of that lens. So I have this sort of opening between the 23mm f2 and the 90, and I think that 50 f.1 is gonna sit in there. I'm not saying that it's gonna earn its spot, but it's definitely something that may keep that spot away from the 56 as well. Anyway, that's my review of the Fuji 90mm f2.0 lens. It's a fantastic product, and really, it's just well built, well constructed. It has nice resistance for the focusing ring, for the aperture ring, things that weren't there in some of the earlier Fuji lenses. Still fits in the palm of your hand, not too heavy, focuses closer than the Viltrox 85 and lighter than the Viltrox 85. Something that I really come to love using and take with me on every photo shoot as well as my travel plans, and something that if you invest in, you probably won't be disappointed by. Most importantly, let me know what you think, especially if you have the 90mm. Let me know in the comments below. Let's carry on the conversation there. And if you haven't by now, subscribe to the channel. It does make a big difference. And turn on notifications so you know when a new video comes out. Again, my name's Gajan. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.